now starting to get into crypto recently?
Yeah. I've been following crypto forever. Bitcoin started around the same time WallStreetBets did. And I was like, oh, this is kind of a cool concept. Academics uh, idea behind this. Like, you're going to make a currency, this medium of exchange of goods and services. It has all the properties of money. The Bitcoin, it's going to have, what do you call it? It's going to have a cap. It's going to have scarcity, which is one of the components of money. It's difficult to destroy. That's another component of money. So yeah, why not? And I followed it along, and I didn't really get into it because there was a lot of execution and efficiencies behind there. If you wanted to do it to get into Bitcoin back then, you really had to devote some time into it. Then as it became easier, if I wanted to get into Bitcoin, then it was still the execution was still not to my liking as far as how long it takes to settle these things, with the spreads between the bid and the ask. There was the fees between them. But the market matured a lot, and it has exploded to the point where it's undeniable. You have crypto spilling into Wall Street, and you have Wall Street spilling into crypto, and it's inevitable that those two things are going to end up getting married. You have Bitcoin futures on the Chicago Board of Exchange. You have Coinbase going public, which is symbolic, but it's still further evidence that it's a legitimate universe. And then you have stocks that you can now start buying through crypto. They call them synthetic stocks. You want to buy Tesla, for example. It's difficult or inaccessible to a lot of the people around the world, but now they can just buy a token, and then somebody else behind the scenes goes and buys the share, and then those two prices basically match what you would. So those universes are marrying, and I'm super excited about the possibilities.
Do you think the government's ever going to try to regulate crypto?
Yeah, they do already. Every time, so I create a wallet. It's like, all right, you want a wallet? Sure. Here's your address. Be happy being anonymous. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. Now I want to buy something with this, right? Or it's something like being here in Mexico. I'm like, okay, this one allows me to take my Bitcoin and put it into pesos into my bank account. So I download this app and says, all right, good. Congratulations. You have this thing. We'll deposit in your account. You can do $200 a month, $200 a month from your broker to your bank. And I'm like, well, that's not very much money. So there's a button that says, okay, you want to put more money? Tell us more about yourself. Put a picture of your ID. You want more money? Sure. Tell us like the sources of income. Sure. You want more money? Tell us your social security number, the equivalent here. So the more and more that I want to participate with this, the more and more the government gets involved with it. So I think, and that's the same in the US, like the closer you get that internet money to a brick and mortar bank, the more the government gets involved. And so I think that they've done a decent job with it. And I think they'll continue doing it because there's a lot of innovation taking place, and it takes place really rapidly. And so most likely the government's going to want to regulate, and with good reasons. I don't think regulation is always a bad thing necessarily.
What do you think, though, about like the government's ability to print money and inject it into the economy, and the FDA with all the inflation and deflation and all of that stuff? Like, how do you think the future of crypto is going to affect the financial world as we know it in that aspect?
I think it's going to live side by side. It's never going to take it over. It's the language. When Bitcoin started, this was fresh right out of the financial crisis with the Occupy Wall Street movement. So a lot of the language was like, "Oh, screw the Fed and their printing money and inflation and the manipulation or whatever. We're going to take them down, make them obsolete." It's cute, but it's not going to happen ever. There's just too much on the other side and too much power on the other side. But they can live side by side, and they can complement each other very well. I think crypto can push mainstream banking into being more competitive, just like Robinhood forced normal brokers to be free and also more competitive. Bitcoin is going to make it so that if you want to transfer funds internationally, it's much faster, easier, and cheaper than what the banks offer. If you want to settle, if I want to check in it cash right now, if I want to clear a check, it takes 3 days for the bank to settle it. And then people say, well, but if you have good credit, the bank will lend you money. It's like, I don't want to borrow money. I want this check to have the funds from that account now. And so the more people go towards crypto to get around these inefficiencies, the more banks are going to have to get their act together.
Isn't Facebook getting its ass kicked right now by Google? There's like a big war between Facebook and Google right now. And do you stay up to date with any of that stuff?
Of course. Yeah, no, I'm very up to date with everything, but it's like these questions can be shallow or very deeply philosophical. They don't do the same stuff. Like Facebook is a social network at heart, right? They collect information, they put out ads, and they're very effective with doing that. That's kind of their business model. They have a huge audience, and Google's in a little bit of everything. For starters, they have the search engine, so it's kind of like the portal to the internet. That's probably their bread and butter. But then they're at everything else. They're in artificial intelligence. They have phones. They have hardware. Like they're doing cars. They're doing you name it, they're getting into it. So they don't directly compete with each other. The Google tried several times to get into the social network, and they failed miserably every time trying to take on Facebook. So they just gave that up, and they're no longer going to try doing that anymore. So I don't know that they'll overlap sometimes, but they're different.
I'm sorry. I was just reading an article in the New York Times. I think it was about Apple versus Facebook.
Yes.
Where Facebook didn't want Apple's going to put some sort of technology update in their phones where they can opt out of Facebook tracking them from app to app. And Facebook's pissed off because they want to be able to do that, because they say that's how they can most effectively market to people, is that they can follow them from app to app.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because like you're kind of at the mercy these I guess let's call Facebook an app for now. Facebook is at the mercy of Apple. We saw, what was it with Fortnite? It's a video game that was really popular, and they got in a scuffle with Apple because of money, and Apple decided to take them off of their Play Store. You can't use Fortnite on your phone anymore. They have the ultimate say. They're like, sorry, just our terms of service, we decided we're the gatekeeper, so sorry about your luck. And so the companies have to kind of play this game where they're like, all right, fine, we'll comply with your service because we have to. Apple has half the market out there, and you can't try to piss them off. But yeah, they're going at each other. So Apple's making all sorts of things to try and create privacy conscious. They're trying to protect privacy. That's kind of their latest direction they're taking things in. And Facebook's model relies on no privacy. So they are kind of crashing a little bit in that regards. So we'll see how it plays out. Facebook, even though it's the mercy of Apple, is still extremely powerful because people are just as married to Facebook as they are to their iPhone. So I'm guessing that they're all using that as a bargaining chip. They're like, fine, don't put Facebook on your phone. See how many people drop iPhone. And then people with the iPhone say, well, fine, I'm not going to put Facebook on my phone. See how many people drop Facebook. So we'll see what happens. Probably somewhere in the middle. They'll negotiate some middle route, maybe some more little agreements. You have to check. Yes, I agree. I don't know. They'll solve it. I don't think it's going to be a big issue.
But news like this, must affect the stocks of each of those companies. Personally, my outsider perspective is that like I can't see the future of Facebook being that bright, because I personally don't know many people that use Facebook that are under the age of 50. And it just seems like Facebook is just this crazy message board of outrage and old people fighting about politics.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I haven't been on Facebook effectively for about a decade. I got on there shortly after I got married several years ago to put pictures of my wedding so that my friends could see what they looked like. And I logged in, put the pictures, logged back out. I haven't been back in there since. So I feel you with that one. I think that the nature of social networks as a whole is whatever's in style. Snapchat was real big for a while. I haven't heard a lot of buzz on that anymore. It seems to be TikTok's the big one nowadays. There was one what was the one that was also videos, the short videos? Vine lasted for a little while. That was super cool, but that came and went really quickly. So it's the nature of the beast. So whoever's in charge of the social network, Twitter, obviously, Instagram, they'll be changing. And I agree with you, but the Facebook does have an advantage, which is they have a lot of users and a lot of active users. Just because you or I don't use it or know people that do use it. Sorry, we do know people that use it. There are mom and dads, right? Like there are uncles. But just because we don't interact doesn't mean that there's a lot of potential there. The fact is that Facebook has so much information. The mere fact that you downloaded the app on your phone and you have it and it's tracking you, like Facebook knows things. And with that knowledge, they can do stuff with it and turn that into money magically. They do still have a ton of power with the ability to target advertising, with the ability to target demographics. Google has that same ability. I think that Facebook does need to innovate, and although their big bread and butter is their original platform. That's probably why they buy up, Instagram, and I think they bought Snapchat at some point. Like
Yeah.
that's their effort to try and stay on top. Just buy whichever one is popular at the time. We'll see what happens, but I agree. I don't know that they have a promising future, but their present is very promising.